it benefits you tremendously to also think in terms of how can I move my potential clients, my leads, my prospects from paid and earned media to owned media. You have control over being able to advertise to those people, market to those people on an ongoing and consistent basis for a much lower cost once you have their contact information in your back pocket. So you don't just want to think in terms of, okay, how can I get a client today? How can I get the next client for my firm? You want to think in terms of how can I build a system that is moving people into media that I control, that I own. It's best if you can convert the hot leads as fast as possible so you can justify and pay for the time and financial costs of paid and earned media. But then you also want to nurture everyone else. Once they're in this owned media universe, we can educate them about all the different challenges that a financial advisor can help them solve, about all the different benefits that they can get by working with a financial advisor so that they can confidently move forward and say, all right, yeah, I'm ready. Welcome to Daily Discovery Calls for Financial Advisors, the first and only show dedicated exclusively to helping entrepreneurial, growth-driven financial advisors book more discovery calls with qualified prospects every day of the week. I'm your host, Roy Furr, TheAdvisorCMO. Let's get into it. All right, I am Roy Furr. We are back with another episode of Daily Discovery Calls for Financial Advisors. Today we're answering the question, where should financial advisors be advertising today? So, big question in this episode. I'm going to say it's a simple question, or at least it seems like a simple question on the surface. I'm going to provide a not so simple answer. I'm sorry. It's a little bit complicated, but that's the truth. That is the truth in answering this question. Because we're dealing with infinite choice in media today, there is an infinite opportunity for you to spend time and money putting content in different places that people could potentially consume it, that you could potentially connect with your target audience. And so you have to deal with that in answering this question. And tied to that, I want to share with you a new way to think about where to advertise. So if you're a financial advisor, if you're an RIA, and you are seriously looking at where you can put your content, where you can put your message through paid advertising or through free content distribution, marketing, this episode is going to be extremely valuable for you because it's going to share with you the fundamental principles and strategies that you should be using to answer that question. So I want to start with that big idea that there is an infinite choice in advertising today. And this, it creates a problem for you. It creates a problem for you because where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money to put your content out there, your advertising out there? I popped this question into ChatGPT just, as a brainstorming tool, because ChatGPT can be an excellent brainstorming tool for something like this. And the reality is the list that it gave me is far longer than what I'm going to share with you right now. And I had to narrow down that list to make it much more palatable to make this point in the podcast. But when I said, hey, what are all the potential opportunities for a financial advisor to be advertising today? It gave me this massive list, including very specific details for many of these that turn out to be categories. So there's traditional and satellite broadcast of radio, of TV. There's broadcast video and audio media. There's streaming audio and video. There's YouTube and podcasts, which are more specific types of streaming audio and video. There's your website. There's search engine optimization that you could be focused on. There's AI engine optimization that you can be focused on. There is your email list of people who have reached out to you. There's cold emails that you can send out to people who haven't reached out to you, but you got their contact information some other way. There is direct mail, and arguably you could say your prospect list and direct mail, as well as direct mail lists that you purchase. There's print media Yes, that still exists, magazines, newspapers, et cetera, different places that you can put your messaging. There's public display advertising. So, hey, you can buy a billboard if you want to buy a billboard, or if you're in a big city, maybe you can buy a banner ad that is in the subway, in the metro. There's different types of public display advertising. There's telemarketing that you can do. And that could be your advisors actually making specific outbound calls, or it could be a firm that you hire on your behalf to do telemarketing. Seminars, workshops, and I will lump in webinars here, are different types of event-based marketing and advertising that you can do to communicate with your prospects. There's also different types of special events that you can put on that's less educational and maybe more about the event itself being something to attend. That can be a different way that you're advertising, a different way that you're marketing. Partnerships and centers of influence, partnering up with other businesses, other people within the industry that have relationships, or people within the community that have relationships with your prospects. These can be different types of advertising, of marketing. Referrals and networking opportunities, kind of lumping those two together. But they can be different ways, just looking for ways that you can get in front of your ideal prospects. Directories, online directories that allow you to put your name there when somebody is searching for financial advisors in your area or with your specialty. Social media content. Again, this is maybe not limited to video and audio, but different content that you can put out there on different platforms where people can discover you. Meta, Google, LinkedIn, advertising on these different platforms, as well as other ad platforms that are out there that allow you to reach similar audiences. Community events and groups. So if there's a particular group in your community or a particular event in your community that attracts your ideal prospect, these are different places that you can invest time, invest money, and invest resources in order to put yourself in front of your audience. And these are just scratching the surface. These absolutely are just scratching the surface. So, even within individual ones of these, you could identify that if we team up centers of influence and email marketing, we could create email marketing campaigns that go out to our centers of influence and so on, right? Like it's fundamentally an infinite choice in advertising today, not because it's practical, not because it's factually an infinite choice, but there's pretty much no way that you are going to do all the things, right? So you have more options than you can actually choose from when you think about all the different places that you could be advertising or marketing. So instead of thinking about this question in terms of all of those specific opportunities, I want to chunk those up into three big categories here. I have it in my notes, the big three: paid, earned, and owned media. So let me answer what each of these are and give you kind of a pros and cons of each. So paid media is basically anywhere that you're going to pay to put your message in front of your audience. Somebody else gives you an opportunity to pay to put your message in front of the audience. And so this can include things like broadcast, radio and TV. It can include things like Google ads or Meta ads or LinkedIn ads. It can include things like putting a billboard up. They have your audience. They have the attention of some audience, and they are willing to let you put whatever you want, within their platform compliance, put whatever you want in front of those people in exchange for money. Now, major benefit to this, to paid media, is it is faster and more controllable. So tomorrow, if you want to be all over in front of everybody in your community and you're willing to pay for it, you can probably figure out a way to make that happen. You can control, I want to have my ads shown to everybody in this particular community for, for this period of time, and it's very controllable. You are just going to have to pay out the nose for it, right? And when I say controllable, it also tends to be controllable in terms of repetition and scale versus the other of these categories that we're going to talk about. Meaning, if you're able to do this and you're able to get it to work, and you want to repeat it, and you want to do it over and over again, and you want to scale it, you want to grow it, it tends to be more controllable there too. The big downside of paid media is, well, that it's paid. It costs more money. It tends to be the most expensive way to acquire leads, to do lead generation and to acquire clients. And so that is one of the three big categories here. The next big category that we're going to talk about is earned media. Earned media is basically somebody else has access to your audience and they are going to let you distinguish yourself in such a way that they're willing to put you in front of their audience. Now, traditionally, you can think of this in terms of like PR. That wasn't even on the first list, but that's a different place that you could be doing advertising and marketing, is getting out there and making yourself an authority that different types of media want to have in their content. And so they feature you, right? That's a type of earned media. But you can also think of earned media in terms of YouTube videos that you put up, or podcasts that you put up, or content that you put on your website for search engine optimization or AI engine optimization. All of that is putting content out there and essentially asking the algorithms that control content discovery in these different channels to show your content to your target audience. And you are earning discovery of your content by your audience when you're putting this content out there. The downsides to that is that it tends to be slower and less controllable, right? The upside to that is that it costs almost no money. And so it costs time instead of money to do earned media. And so if you're launching a podcast or you're launching a YouTube channel, the reality is it's probably going to be 6 months, 9 months, 12 months before you're really starting to get good traction with that. If you're putting content out there, it's going to typically take a while for search engines to pick it up or AI answer engines to pick it up. It's not that it will never pick it up like in the first couple days or months or weeks or whatever, but it typically takes time for earned media reputation to develop and start to build a snowball effect. The great thing about earned media is when you do develop that reputation, when you do start to get picked up by whatever algorithms are picking you up or whatever media sources are picking you up, it tends to be easier and easier and get bigger and bigger and bigger results. And so the snowball effect means that initially there's very little to show for it for a lot of work, but in the long run, it can have a ton of payoff for very little work to maintain it through time. So that's earned media. We did paid media, we did earned media. Owned media is incredibly powerful once it's built. It does take time to build it, and we'll talk about that before we're done with this episode. It's incredibly powerful once it's built, and it's highly profitable. In fact, owned media can be responsible for more new clients and more production for financial advisors than either one of these. Owned media is the media that you control the distribution of to a specific audience. And so the most obvious explicit example of this is a database of people who gave you their contact information in exchange for some kind of valuable information that you offered to them. So let's go with the Fisher Investments example. Although they're not a great example of leveraging owned media, they are a great example of creating this owned media potential in a way that a lot of financial advisors could be replicating. So Fisher Investments for a long time has advertised free reports. If you fit whatever criteria, then you should be reading this free report from Fisher Investments. Here's the value that it's going to give you. Go here, give your name, your email address, your phone number, and your net worth or your current investable assets, and we'll give you the report, right? Then they have your email address, and they can use that email address to continue to market to you, to continue to share information and education with you until you say stop, until you say unsubscribe me, until you say I'm no longer interested, or until they convert you into a client. And when you do that, this can be an ever-growing source of new business, of people who don't convert right away, who don't become clients right away, but who will become clients, who could end up becoming clients, we'll say, at some point in the future, once they reach the threshold of, okay, I know you, I like you, I trust you enough, I revere your subject matter expertise enough that I would like to become a client of your firm. And you have the ability to continue to reach out to those people. You can send them emails. You can link them to your new YouTube videos, and you can link them to your podcast episodes. You can share all sorts of different content and valuable information with them through time. You can invite them to join you for a new webinar. You can give them more reports, all of that. The thing is, you own the relationship with those people. You own the ability to distribute content to them that they can then consume, that can drive them to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm ready to meet with a financial advisor today. So paid media goes out to audiences that you don't have a relationship with yet, and you pay for exposure. Earned media goes out to audiences that you don't have a relationship with, and that you have to earn the right to have your media be what's featured to them. Owned media is, I have a relationship with these people and I can communicate with them because I have their contact information and the way to communicate with them. I have the ability to communicate with them. And so that's my big opportunity there. Now, with that said, let's pivot a little bit, because those are different kind of categories of media. But then we start to get into specific mediums that we're going to make a decision about. So where should we be putting our message? And I will say your message dictates your medium. And so if we're talking long video, short video, long podcast episode, long radio show, long TV show, short TV commercial, short radio ad, short direct mail piece, longer direct mail piece, short email, etc. If we're talking about these different mediums and we start to look at very specifically, what are we able to display in this context? So, for example, if you're choosing to go to paid advertising on the Meta advertising distribution network, which can include Facebook, it can include Instagram, it can include ads that show up in different places that's in their audience network. If you're going there, there are specific requirements of what the media can look like, what the videos can be, how much text there can be, what the visuals can be, and that can vary based on the different placements. Likewise, if you're going to do TV, long form TV, short form TV, all of that. Well, your message that you're going to put out there, and specifically the offer, the action that you're going to ask someone to take, is going to dictate what's going to work best. And for illustration here, I'd like to break this into low threshold offers and high threshold offers. And so a low threshold offer is something like that free report, or another type of what's called a lead magnet, where it's a chunk of information. It's information typically, or maybe a tool, but it's not a conversation with an advisor or with somebody who appears to be a salesperson. It's a chunk of information that somebody can consume on their own. That tends to be a very low threshold offer. It tends to be fairly easy to understand. And that works really well in short form visual media, especially if you have something like the cover of a free guide or a free report that you're offering them to be able to download. Well, I've had great success with a headline, a picture of the report, where the title itself is a very clear promise of value that they're going to get, and is very clear about what the content of the report is, and a button that says download. And that very short form visual media, like a banner ad that just has that, can be really effective at moving someone onto your site so that they can fill out the form so they can request that report, right? And that's a very low threshold offer. It works very well for that. It also works very well if you have something as simple as that, a new guide, a new report. You can do a very short ad. So like a 30 or 60 second radio or TV ad could be very effective at bringing people in and getting them to raise their hand for that specific report. A short YouTube pre-roll advertisement that goes as a video that goes on YouTube that gets somebody to request a report. Again, all of these, when the offer is very simple and it doesn't require a high commitment from them, especially in terms of showing up or having a conversation with somebody, feeling like they're going to get sold to, short form visual media can be really effective at doing that. For higher threshold offers, so for example, a desirable discovery call offer, that's an actual call that they're booking with a member of your team where they're going to get some kind of, so a great example of this might be a tax saving strategy session or a retirement tax saving strategy session. Well, they know they're going to talk to a member of your team. They know they're going to have a conversation with somebody whose ultimate job is to move that person to becoming a client of the firm, right? It's understood that that's what that is, even if it's not stated explicitly. They also know that that's going to take more commitment on their part, and they are less apt to respond to that based on, hey, if you'd like us to talk to you about the taxes that you're going to pay on your retirement accounts, you should give us a call. It's harder to get people to respond in large numbers to that from a very short advertisement or a very short marketing message. And so something like that, where you're trying to get somebody to book an appointment, is going to tend to work best in longer form content. It's going to tend to work best in audio or video content. And so if you have a much longer, for example, a podcast episode delivered via video, a podcast episode delivered via audio, if you have that kind of long form content, it's much easier at the end of that to provide somebody with a related offer that says, hey, if you've been getting a lot of value out of this, the next step is to figure out how it applies to your personal situation. And we can do that here. And so that's a much higher threshold offer that typically requires a medium that allows you to do more storytelling, that allows you to do to present a fuller message, that gives you that time and that space, that is going to have somebody engaged to a level where they feel like they know, like they trust, and they revere you enough to the point where they say, all right, I'm willing to meet with this person and see what they have to say, right? And so a higher threshold offer is going to tend to perform better in longer form content. And so, for example, TV shows, when I was working with the agency that was doing TV shows for financial advisors, it was really easy to get people to raise their hand from watching a TV show to request an appointment with a member of the team. For shorter content, it was much easier to get people to respond to something that was maybe more of an informational offer. And so your message dictates your medium, or your medium dictates your message. If you're going to choose to pursue a particular medium, then you're going to have to make decisions based on what's actually going to work in that medium, or what's most likely to work in that medium. And it's going to typically be a lower threshold offer is going to work in a medium where you have less space to convey what the offer is and all the reasons that someone should respond, versus a higher threshold offer that's going to work best when you have the most space to really tell your full sales story. Next thing that you need to consider as you're making this decision about where should financial advisors be advertising today is, where can you find your audience? Where can you find your specific audience? And we have to step back from that and ask, who is your ideal client? And so if you look at like the mass market pre-retiree audience, which tends to be great for financial advisors because their assets or their accounts are maybe more mobile, they're moving into a space where they could move their IRA or 401k to a financial advisor. And they're making some big decisions about the rest of their life that really benefit from financial planning. If that's your ideal client, then any mass media that's targeting people from, let's say, age 55 to 70 is going to be a pretty good fit for you. The kind of mass media that those people are already paying attention to is going to be a great fit. So who's your ideal client and where are they already paying attention? On the other side of that, I was talking to a financial advisor who was targeting high income earners at a very specific company that has well over 10,000 employees, and a lot of them are concentrated in a very specific geographic area. Well, one of the best ways to target those people in particular is through LinkedIn, just because that is a place where you can say, I want to target the people who work for this company in this geographic area, right? And that's where at least some of them are already paying attention. So can I put my message in front of those that are logging on there, that are paying attention, and that might be receptive to the message? But again, it comes from defining your ideal client, asking where are they already paying attention, and then adding a layer onto that, where can you effectively and affordably target them? So it is harder to effectively and affordably target employees of a specific company in a geographic area by going to mass media than by going to something that allows much more specific targeting. But if you have an offer or your ideal client is consuming a specific type of mass media, for example, tuned into a specific TV channel at a specific time, then you're going to be much more likely to make it work to buy that particular type of mass media versus trying to target them in some different way. And so again, you want to find your audience when you're thinking about where should you be advertising today. If your audience is very specific and would be found through one very specific type of media, then that's going to be one thing. If your audience is much more broad and you have a service offering that works for those people, for that very broad audience, then that may be what you want to do. So ask yourself, who's your ideal client? Where are they already paying attention? And where can you effectively and affordably target them? And that's going to help you narrow down. Again, we're trying to limit down this infinite choice in advertising today. Now, a lot of that was about going out into the world, right? A lot of that was about, how do I put my ads out through either paid media or earned media? Your audience could be on a specific, they could be on YouTube. They could be searching online. They could be people who listen to podcasts. It could be, lots of different things. But this is that was about going out into the world, going out and chasing those people. I talked about it is very beneficial to build this owned media channel. And so let's talk about creating your own advertising channel. It benefits you tremendously if you're doing different types of paid or earned media to also think in terms of, how can I move my potential clients, my leads, my prospects from paid and earned media to owned media? So, I use the Fisher Reports or the Fisher Investments free report example already. One of the wonderful things that does is it moves somebody. If you're spending a bunch of money on paid advertising, putting those free report offers all over the place, it moves that person who requests that report from paid media engagement to owned media engagement. You have control over being able to advertise to those people, market to those people on an ongoing and consistent basis for a much lower cost once you have their contact information in your back pocket. And so in order to do this, you don't just want to think in terms of, okay, how can I get a client today? How can I get the next client for my firm? You want to think in terms of, how can I build a system that is moving people into media that I control, that I own. Typically, this is going to be your email contact list. You can also do it with postal mail, although it tends to be more affordable. It tends to be cheaper to email people. Arguably, having the postal mail, that can be a highly effective way to convert people who are already in your audience as well. But you want to think in terms of moving people into a world where they're giving you their contact information. You want to build lead generation and marketing funnels that aren't just designed to get a client today, but that are designed to get people into your world where you can continue to communicate with them. And when you do that, it's best if you can convert the hot leads as fast as possible. So you can justify and pay for the time and financial costs of paid and earned media. You want to convert the hot leads as fast as possible. You want to get them booking discovery calls with members of your team. But then you also want to nurture everyone else. And I've talked in past episodes about how Google did some research and discovered that in between the stimulus of advertising or marketing content and the response of somebody moving into an active buying process, in our case, that would be where they're willing to actually speak with a financial advisor, there's now this evaluation step that's really grown as a result of the proliferation of the internet, really. That because we have infinite access to all of the world's information and we have infinite choice as consumers, I could become a client of a financial advisor who's around the corner from me, who's effectively like in my neighborhood, right? Or I could become the client of a financial advisor who doesn't even have a physical office in my city, who is located somewhere else, but who is able to still provide that service to me. And so we have this like infinite choice as consumers, and this goes well beyond financial services. What Google realized is across all different types of products and services, all different types of markets, all different types of buying decision-making processes, people are spending an average of 7 hours consuming content that assists them with the evaluation of making a buying decision before they actually enter the active buying process. And those 7 hours of content exists across an average of 11 separate touch points and across 4 separate media types or media channels. And so different media types and channels could be video, it could be audio, it could be text on your website, it could be email, it could be, seeing you on TV, it could be hearing you on the radio. So all of the different contacts, there's 11 separate touch points and 7 hours of engagement. And it might be even longer for financial services because it's such a complex buying decision. And we can include personal touches and personal conversations here, although arguably those might accelerate the buying decision-making process because of the human touch. But what I'm talking about here, when we're creating our own advertising channel, when we're moving to owned media, when we're making the decision to nurture everyone else, what I'm talking about is very intentionally building our processes, our systems, our marketing communication plans so that when we do that lead generation, when we're bringing people in the door, for those who don't immediately become clients, we are looking to satisfy that threshold of well over 7 hours of engagement, 11 separate touch points, 4 separate media channels. And the way that we do that and make it especially affordable is through owned media. Now, those people can continue to be exposed to paid advertising. They can continue to be exposed to earned marketing messages showing up through content discovery online. But once they're in this owned media universe, we can really communicate with them, educate them, provide value about all the different challenges that a financial advisor can help them solve, about all the different benefits that they can get by working through and with a financial advisor. We can continue to educate them and nurture them to help them move that buying process along, to help them make an informed, educated decision about, number one, whether or not they should work with a financial advisor, and number two, how they might choose a financial advisor that might end up being us, so that they can confidently move forward and say, all right, yeah, I'm ready. I'd like to talk with a financial advisor. And that becomes much more affordable and much more within your control when you do it within your own advertising channel, when you do it within owned media. So we think of the paid and earned media as lead generation sources, And we think of the owned media as an opportunity to actually nurture and to convert those leads. So we're attracting them from these different paid and earned media opportunities, and we are converting them through having an ongoing conversation with them through our owned media. Now, whatever you do, I would say make it as measurable as possible. So, great example of this, you can use a service like CallRail, which allows you to buy specific phone numbers so that you can track who responds to a specific marketing message. And you might send out, I'll give an example here. You might send out 3 different direct mail letters, and one of them generates 5 calls, and one of them generates 18 calls, and one of them generates 11 calls. Well, depending on statistical significance, and we can get into all of that if you want to nerd out with me for a while, but you're probably going to want to send more of the one that generated 18 calls, right? And the only way that you know to do that is you make it measurable. The same thing with, okay, we're going to try some Facebook advertising. We're going to try some Google advertising. We're going to try these different. Perfect attribution does not exist, and you're not going to perfectly measure everything. But when you make your advertising and marketing measurable, you give someone a specific action that they take in response to your advertising, and you're able to measure that action, it allows you to make smart decisions about how you're going to invest in marketing going forward. And I will say that unless you are some major financial services firm, like Fidelity can get away with branding. The average financial advisor, independent RIA can't afford branding, just putting branding out there. Before you're going to make an impact, you're going to be broke. You're going to spend way too much money on mass media before you're even getting a realistic return of people actually coming in the door. But if you put out specific messages that are measurable, that have an offer, that encourage people to respond in a specific way to get a specific service offering, the desirable discovery calls that I was talking about. So they tell people to respond, hey, if you want a retirement tax savings strategy session, this is the number you need to call, or this is the link you need to click. Then you can actually decide, did this get me leads and clients at an acceptable rate? Or did it not? And should I try something else? And you want to create a response mechanism that's appropriate to the media. So, for example, you can't put a link in a direct mail piece, right? But you can put a reply card. You can put a QR code that someone could go to. You can put a specific phone number that someone could call. There's some different options that you could do in direct mail. If it's a banner, obviously clicking is the simplest way for someone to respond. And so making it very click friendly or make it very, very, very click worthy is going to be the way to create the response mechanism that's appropriate to the media. For TV, it tends to be best if you can get somebody to pick up the phone and call in response to that. Any kind of broadcast media is really like that. And so you create this response mechanism that's appropriate to the media. You measure that response, and you follow a process of test, prove, scale, which means we're going to test this. We're going to do a very limited test of this particular advertising marketing channel, and we're going to see how it works. We're going to test this thing in this channel, see how it works. If it gets us numbers that make sense to us, then we're going to try that test again to prove it. So that means that we're going to essentially do the same thing another time and see if it's giving us the same kind of results. So it wasn't just a fluke that it worked the first time. And then once we have some evidence that we've gathered around the measurable response that we're able to generate to this particular advertising, this particular marketing, then we start to put more money behind it. We start to commit more and more budget to scaling up that source of new leads, new clients. And there's some different things that you can measure here. So you can measure response, like how many leads were generated, how many specific people raised their hand. You can also measure return on investment, which means we spent this much on this specific media and it generated this many new clients who brought in this much in assets that generated this much in fees. And so we know the new client revenue that we can attribute back to this specific investment in advertising and marketing. And it's great to be able to measure that. Now, that's something that you typically have to measure milestones along the way because of how long the process is to that new client revenue, but you can measure the ROI of specific marketing channels. You can also, especially as you get more sophisticated, measure the impact of different channels. So going back to the Google thing, the 7 hours, 11 touch points in 4 separate media channels. Well, as you start to look at attribution, especially if you're spending lots of money in different marketing channels, different advertising channels, what you'll find is actually that there's far more clients coming in the door than you can actually count, on your client list, because they're all taking some credit for someone who bounced off a bunch of different touch points. And so it starts to become more difficult to measure the specific return on investment of individual marketing channels. But if you are more sophisticated, if you have a bigger media operation, you can measure the impact of different media channels by making adjustments in budget and seeing how it impacts the total picture going forward. And at the very least, if you are doing all these different types of marketing, you should be looking at marketing efficiency ratio. And so what this is you take the total new client revenue and divide it by the amount of money that you spent on marketing during whatever period. And so that might be, we spent, let's say we spent $1 million on marketing to get 600,000 in new client revenue. And you may be shocked at that, but that's actually the average ratio, according to a Kitces study, of what advisors are spending on the soft plus hard costs of marketing for how much new revenue. It is a 0.6 to 1 ratio. Or you spend $1 million on marketing to get $1 million in new client revenue, or you spend $1 million on marketing to get $2 million in new client revenue. That is the marketing efficiency ratio, and that is something you should absolutely measure. And you're going to benefit. Like, that one is a number that you can even step back when your marketing and advertising is less measurable, and you can measure that particular number. But then when you get into, did this specific piece of advertising work? Is it getting the specific results we want at acceptable numbers, at acceptable rates? Then you have to have the specific pieces of advertising be measurable. And I strongly recommend that, especially when it comes to paid media. If you are spending money to put your marketing and advertising messages out there, you need to have a clear thing for someone to respond to get, whether that is a specific service offering or a specific downloadable lead magnet, etc. You need to have a specific thing that they are responding to get, and you need to have a specific way that they respond, a response mechanism that you're able to measure, that you're able to track to justify the expense in paid media. Now, a lot of people are going to do this, and they're going to do it, once or twice. They're going to try a few things, and they're going to say, well, I tried that. I tried Meta ads and they didn't work. I tried LinkedIn ads and they didn't work. I tried TV advertising and it doesn't work for me. And there's a real trap that you can get into. It's the I tried that, it doesn't work trap. Another example here is lead generation services. Anytime any advisor brings up lead generation services in any kind of online, conversation forum, you'll get a whole chorus of advisors saying, oh, I tried lead generation services. I tried Smart Asset, whatever, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But then you go and you look at other advisors who try Smart Asset and actually figure out how to make it work. And then they scale their businesses in a very rapid way because they have figured out how to make the lead generation services work. In that case, it's probably actually by building essentially a call center sales operation to pursue those leads, to bring those leads in a very effective, efficient way. that the other advisors who tried it and it didn't work for them weren't willing to do. And so I tried it, I tried that, it doesn't work trap. My response to that is that not all media works, but most media can be made to work. Most advertising, most marketing can be made to work. You just have to figure out what works for that particular advertising channel, that particular marketing channel. And you have to figure out, is that marketing channel the way that I'm going to actually go out and attract the ideal clients that I'm trying to attract? So, going back to this idea of very specific employees of a specific firm versus the mass market pre-retiree offer or target audience. Well, you may decide that I'm going to try mass market to get the employees of a specific firm. Well, that might not actually work for you, right? That doesn't mean that the mass market doesn't work. It means that it didn't work for you. If you tried something and it didn't work, what you tried didn't work. And so you may need to change the media you're using. You may need to change the offer that you're making. You may need to change your messaging. You may need to change whatever. You just have to do a little bit of problem solving here and say, is the problem that this media doesn't work? Is the problem that the way that I did this media doesn't work, even though it could work for me? Or is it maybe this media doesn't work for me and I need to go down the street because that other opportunity is a better opportunity for me? And so as you're making this decision, where should financial advisors advertise today? Avoid the I tried that, it doesn't work trap. So let's answer the question. Where should financial advisors be advertising today? You can use mass media. You can use targeted media. You can use algorithmic targeting. You can use your database. You could be advertising in all of these places. The mass media, this can be, hey, I'm just going to choose to advertise on these TV stations at this time, right? I'm going to use targeted media, which is, I know that I want to go after this particular audience in this particular media channel or platform or whatever allows me to target those people. Algorithmic targeting is something that we haven't really gotten into, but it is really the future of a lot of online advertising. And it is the present of Meta advertising, Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising, and it is the emerging present of Google advertising. Basically, what algorithmic targeting is you create an advertisement that very much speaks to and is obviously for your core audience. You create that advertisement and you upload it to the platform and you make sure that the data about who converts is fed back to the platform. And then you let their AI algorithms try putting that message in front of different people that based on the content of that message, they think will be a fit. And you let the AI algorithm adjust based on the conversion data that you give it. And then eventually the algorithm will figure out this type of person responds to this message. And so we're going to keep putting that message in front of that type of person. And that's what algorithmic targeting is. All of these can be great options. Your database, probably the most profitable option, right? What it comes down to is you have to look at all of this and you have to put your marketer hat on. You have to put your thinking hat on. You have to say, all right, how am I going to get in front of my people? And what kind of message am I going to deliver? How am I going to put the right message in front of the right person at the right time such that they're going to want to respond? And, there's a little problem in solving involved with that. But this thinking that I've given you here, again, simple question, not so simple answer, but this thinking is what it's going to take for you to be making that decision. And this thinking is way more powerful than me saying, oh, you need to have a podcast or you need to be on YouTube or whatever. In wrapping up, I'm going to say, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all those good things that you do to help this podcast be delivered to more people like you, so that those algorithms that are used for content discovery, that are used for paid advertising, all of that, know to put this message in front of people like you who will find it valuable. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm at Roy Furr there. That's ROYFURR. And I've mentioned desirable discovery calls a couple times in this episode. That's something where as soon as I recommended that, it changed the game for the financial advisors that were using it, because instead of, hey, call me, or hey, submit your information so I can chase you down and sell you, it was, we have this particular free service offering that we do for people. And here's what it is. Here's the value that it promises. And if you'd like to go through this service with us, it's not going to cost you anything. It's complimentary. You just go here and this is how you get it. And it's a 12-minute video, the Desirable Discovery Calls training. It's a 12-minute video that explains that whole strategy. And again, it did really change the game for the advisors who started using it on my recommendation starting in 2018. And I think it can change the game for you. If you want to book more discovery calls with your ideal prospects, go to TheAdvisorCMO.com/discovery. That's TheAdvisorCMO.com/discovery. That link is also in the description. And you can get that free 12-minute training video. Again, I'm Roy Furr. This is Daily Discovery Calls for Financial Advisors. I hope you've gotten a ton of value out of this, and I look forward to sharing my next episode with you soon. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Daily Discovery Calls for Financial Advisors. If you got value from this episode, I'd absolutely love it if you do me the favor of sharing it with one other person who you think would also find it valuable. It's how the show can grow and how I can keep bringing this value to you. And if you want to learn more about how you can book more discovery calls with your ideal clients, go to TheAdvisorCMO.com/podcast.